And yes, so I'm really excited about it. So tonight's contest is a culmination of weeks and months of work for our students in this case, grades 10 through 12. All of our students have worked on presenting a declamation in their English classes, and tonight we're seeing the 12 students who were selected to be this year's finalists. So thank you for coming. I believe that you will enjoy tonight's declaimers and also some special musical performances. Now, before our competition begins, I do need to introduce our distinguished panel of judges. Judges, if you would please stand as I introduce you. So in alphabetical order, first, if we could welcome Jenny Bryant. So Ms. Bryant was born and raised on Long Island, worked for 17 years at a major airline in sales and marketing until she felt a true calling in teaching. So she returned to college for a master's in elementary education, has been teaching for 16 years. Presently, Ms. Bryant is the lead teacher at Faith Preschool at the Three Village Church. Ms. Bryant is married and is a proud mom of 3 children, and 2 weeks ago, she welcomed her first grandchild. Great. So very grateful for your help tonight. Now I'd like to introduce Cy Carter. So Mr. Carter grew up in Texas, now spends his time between Long Island and Los Angeles managing design projects with his wife, artist Genevieve Carter. We're especially fortunate to have Mr. Carter on our esteemed panel of judges because of his background in theater and film. He studied theater at Rhodes College and the Williamstown Theater Festival until his roles segued him into the mainstream television and film. Mr. Carter is driven by a search for authenticity, which serves him well in his multiple creative endeavors, from film to residential and commercial design work. Mr. Carter resides in Smithtown with his wife and 2 daughters, Sterling and Adair. Thank you for being here. And I'd like to welcome back to Stony Brook, Allie Cunningham. Ms. Cunningham grew up in Setauket, attended Stony Brook for 6 years. During those years, she was active in a wide range of school activities, committees, including our theater productions, chairing the prom committee her senior year. She recently graduated from Harvard College, is working in the New York City firm of Cleary, Gottlieb, Steen, and Hamilton as a corporate paralegal. So we're delighted to have you back. We appreciate your help with the declamation contest. So, Mr. Jeffrey Kyle, another alumni. Mr. Kyle grew up on the mission field in Mexico City, Mexico, for 14 years, attended and graduated Stony Brook School in 2002. He enjoyed playing basketball at Stony Brook with a starting lineup that included students from Saudi Arabia, Japan, Mexico, and New York. Very exotic places, including New York. Mr. Kyle has worked with China and the Chinese people since graduating from Covenant College in 2006. So he has been serving as a coordinator with the U.S. ministry that is serving between U.S. and Chinese churches. He served stateside as Vice President of China Partnership since 2009, is passionate about helping U.S. churches thoughtfully engage with the people and the churches of China. Mr. Kyle lives in New York City with his wife, Mary Elizabeth, and their almost 3-year-old son, John David. Thank you for coming. Please welcome Nancy Rose. Ms. Mose is a teacher, director, and performer. When she's not working on new curriculum, she teaches undergraduate and graduate students, pushing them to develop new skills in presence, audience connection, and personal investment. She is a coordinator for Science Unplugged, a program where she coaches 30-minute talks that Stony Brook University graduate researchers develop about their work and then tour local high schools. Ms. Mose completed her MFA in dramaturgy at Stony Brook University. She is the recipient of the 2017-2018 Chancellor's Award at Stony Brook University for excellence in teaching, and is an honorary member of the Golden Key International Honor Society. Thank you for being with us. And Joseph Rulli, also class of 2002. Mr. Rulli attended the Stony Brook School for 5 years. He was a goalie for the varsity soccer team, a team which was undefeated in their league in the 2002 season.
What up?
Mr. Rulli also played varsity lacrosse. He also has the distinction of enduring English classes taught by me during my first 2 years of an experiment in sleep deprivation we call teaching at Stony Brook. So after graduation, Mr. Rulli attended Muhlenberg College. He currently serves as finance director in the office of Tim, it's Siney, right? Siney, the Suffolk County attorney. So thank you for coming and joining us tonight, Mr. Rulli. So there will be 3 categories of declamation tonight, oration, humor, and drama. Our winner will be selected from each category and will receive a prize of $100. Between each category, there will be a musical interlude. I would also like to mention that for many years, all of our performers at the declamation contest, speakers as well as musicians, have been rewarded with a generous gift certificate for the Good Steer restaurant in Lake Grove, which is donated by the owner of the Good Steer, Mr. Bob McCarroll, who's an alumni and also a Stony Brook School parent and a long-time supporter and fan of the declamation contest. Mr. McCarroll. So, before I introduce tonight's declaimers, audience, please take a minute to make sure that you have silenced all of your noisemakers. I will do the same. Okay? And students, I am sure your peers who are competing tonight really appreciate your support for their endeavors. As you've all been working on declamations for your English classes, you know the hard work that goes into a declamation, the concentration that this requires. So I'd like to remind you that if you need to get up from your seats for any reason, please choose to do so at a point that will not be distracting, of course, for our declaimers. All right. So Tech, go ahead and bring down the house lights, and we'll begin with our first category. So tonight's first category is oration. In the aftermath of World War II, many countries took the lead in drawing public attention to wartime atrocities. Some feel that our reactions to these events have been insufficient. Some have argued that while Western countries have been keenly aware of the Holocaust committed in Germany and Poland, the West has paid too little attention to similar atrocities that occurred during that time in the East. One such argument is found in Iris Chang's controversial book, The Rape of Nanking, in which he challenges the leaders of Japan and also the people of the West to adequately acknowledge and address the inhumane massacre of civilians that happened in Nanking during the Japanese occupation of Chinese territory. Senior Tina Luo will now interpret this introduction to Chang's book. Please welcome Tina Luo.
The chronicle of humankind's cruelty to fellow humans is a long and sorry tale. But it is true that even in such horror tales, there are degrees of ruthlessness. Then few atrocities in world history compare in intensity and scale to the rape of Nanking during World War II. Americans think of World War II as beginning on December 7th, 1941, when Japanese carrier-based airplanes attacked Pearl Harbor. Europeans dated from September 1st, 1939, and the Blitzkrieg assault on Poland by Hitler's Luftwaffe and Panzer's divisions. Africans seen an even earlier beginning, the invasion of Ethiopia by Mussolini in 1935. Yet, Asians must trace the war's beginning all the way back to Japan's first step toward the military domination of East Asia, the occupation of Manchuria in 1931. Just as Hitler's Germany would do half a decade later, Japan used a highly developed military machine and a master race mentality to set about establishing its right to rule its neighbors. No doubt, 14 years of domination by the Japanese military were marked by countless incidents of almost indescribable ruthlessness. We will never know everything that happened in many cities and small villages that found them prostrate beneath the boot of this concrete force. If one event can be held up as an example of the unmitigated evil lying just below the surface of unbridled military adventurism, that moment is the rape of Nanking. Hitler killed about 6 million Jews and Stalin more than 14 million Russians, but these deaths were brought about over some few years. In the rape of Nanking, the killing was concentrated within a few weeks. The death toll of Nanking, one Chinese city only, exceeds the number of civilian casualties of some European countries for the entire war. The rape of Nanking should be remembered not only for the number of people slaughtered, but for the cruel manner in which many of them met their death. Chinese men were used for bayonet practices and in decapitation contests. An estimated 20,000 to 80,000 Chinese women were raped. Many soldiers went beyond rape to disembowel women, sliced off their breasts, nailed them alive to walls. Fathers were forced to rape their daughters and sons, their mothers, as other family members watched. Yet, the rape of Nanking remained an obscure incident. Unlike the atomic explosion in Japan or the Jewish Holocaust in Europe, the horrors of the massacre at Nanking remain virtually unknown to people outside of Asia. Throughout my childhood, Nanjing 大屠杀 remained buried in the back of my mind as a metaphor for unspeakable evil. In Japan, to express one's true opinion about Sino-Japanese war could be and continues to be career-threatening and even life-threatening. What baffled and saddened me was the persistent Japanese refusal to come to terms with its own past. It is not just that Japan has sold out less than 1% of the amount that Germany has paid in war reparations to its victims. It is not just that, unlike Nazis who, if not incarcerated for their crimes, were at least forced from public life, Japanese war criminals continue to occupy powerful positions in industry and government after the war. What strongly motivated me throughout this long and difficult labor was the persistent refusal of many prominent Japanese politicians, academics, and industrial leaders to admit, despite overwhelming evidence, the Nanking massacre have ever happened. Germany today is a better place because Jews have never allowed that country to forget what it did during World War II. The American South is a better place for its acknowledgement of the evil of slavery and the 100 years of Jim Crowism that followed emancipation. Japanese culture will not move forward until it admits not only to the world, but to itself how improper were its actions during World War II. As the Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel warned many years ago, to forget the Holocaust is to kill twice. My greatest hope is to inspire other authors and historians to investigate of Nanking survivors before the last of the wars from the past are extinguished forever. Because those who cannot remember the history are condemned to repeat it. Thank you.
Sophomore Chimilu Ani will now take us to the decade before the American Civil War, when leaders of the abolitionist movement worked to persuade Americans to end the practice of slavery. Frederick Douglass, a former slave and leading abolitionist, is well known for his eloquent denunciations of slavery in America, including an address he gave in 1852 in Rochester, New York, now called The Hypocrisy of American Slavery. Please welcome Chimilu as she interprets this address.
citizens, pardon me and allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I and those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom or of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? I say it with a sad sense of disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of your glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions, whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilant shouts that reach them. If I do forget, if I do not remember these grieving children of sorrow this day, may my right hand forget her cunning, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs and to chime in with the popular theme, would be treason most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world. My subject then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day and its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view. Standing here, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never seemed blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of this nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call into question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet, not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, or who is not at heart a slave owner, shall not confess to be right and just. But I fancy I hear some of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your fellow abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? On what branch of the subject do the people of this country need light? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? That point is conceded already. Nobody doubts it. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven who does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What? Am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes? To rob them of their liberty? To work them without wages? To make them ignorant of their relation to their fellow man? To beat them with sticks? To flay their flesh with the lash? To load their limbs with iron? To hunt them with dogs? To sell them at auctions? To sunder their families? To knock out their teeth? To burn their flesh? To starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employment for my time and strength than such arguments would imply. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability, and could I reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. And its crimes against God and man must be denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days of the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boast of liberty, unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mock. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all their religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes that would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation of this earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go, search where you will. Roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world. Travel through South America. Search out every abuse. And when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation. And you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival.
In 1990, astronomer Carl Sagan requested that the space probe Voyager 1 capture and transmit an image of the Earth seen from a distance of 6 billion kilometers. This image is now a famous picture, often called the pale blue dot. In 1994, Sagan published a reflection on this image and our place in the universe. Junior Deanna Kelly will now interpret a passage from Carl Sagan's book. Please welcome Deanna Kelly.
The spacecraft was a long way from home, beyond the orbit of the outermost planet and high above the ecliptic plane, which is an imaginary flat surface that we can think of as something like a racetrack, in which the orbits of the planets are mainly confined. The ship was speeding away from the sun, but in early February of 1990, it was overtaken by an urgent message from Earth. Obediently, it turned its cameras back toward the now distant planets. It snapped 60 pictures and stored them in digital form on his tape recorder. Then slowly, it radioed the data back to Earth. Each image was composed of 640,000 pixels, like the dots in the point of this painting. The spacecraft was 3.7 billion miles away, so far away that it took each pixel 5.5 hours to reach us. Voyager 1 was so high above the ecliptic plane because in 1981 it made a close pass by Titan, the giant moon of Saturn. Its sister ship, Voyager 2, was dispatched on a different trajectory within the ecliptic plane, so she was able to perform her celebrated explorations of Uranus and Neptune. The two Voyager robots have explored 4 planets and nearly 60 moons. They are the triumphs of human engineering and one of the glories of the American space program. They will be in history books when much else about our time is forgotten. Now, the Voyagers were guaranteed to work only until the Saturn encounter, so I thought it might be a good idea, just after Saturn, to have them take one last glance homeward. From Saturn, I knew the Earth would appear too small for Voyager to make out any detail. Our planet would be just a point of light, a lonely pixel, hardly distinguishable from the many other points of light Voyager could see, which include nearby planets and far-off suns. But precisely because of the obscurity of our world thus revealed, such a picture might be worth having. While almost everyone is taught that the Earth is a sphere, while all of us somehow glued to it by gravity, the reality of our circumstances did not really begin to sink in until the famous Apollo photograph of the whole Earth, the one taken by the Apollo 17 astronauts in the last journey of humans to the moon. The Apollo pictures of the whole Earth conveyed to multitudes something well known to astronomers. On the scale of worlds, humans are inconsequential. A thin film of life on an obscure and solitary lump of rock and metal. It seemed to me that another picture of Earth taken from 100,000 times farther away might help in the continuing process of revealing ourselves, our true circumstance and condition. The then NASA Administrator, Rear Admiral Richard Truly, stepped in and made sure that these images were obtained. The space scientist Candy Hansen of NASA's JPL and Carolyn Porco of the University of Arizona designed the command sequence and calculated the camera exposure times. From this distance, the planets seem only points of light, smeared or unsmeared, even through the high-resolution telescope of broad Voyager. They are like planets seen with the naked eye from the surface of Earth, luminous dots, brighter than most of the stars. You cannot tell merely by looking at one of these dots what it's like, what's on it, what his past has been, and whether in this particular epoch anyone lives there. From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest, but for us, it's different. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being that ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joys and sufferings, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every supreme leader, every superstar, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a tiny mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors so that in glory and in triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in this universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in a great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores a responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
Our last oration will be offered by Senior Ruby Lee. She'll be interpreting a personal essay published by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Viet Thanh Nguyen. A child of Vietnamese immigrants into the United States, Nguyen reflects on experiences he believes are common to many Asian Americans. Please welcome Ruby Lee.
I grew up in a relatively diverse city of San Jose, California in the 1980s. My neighbors were older white working class people, Mexican immigrants, and Vietnamese refugees. Then I went to a mostly white high school with only a handful of students of Asian descent. We knew we were different, but we found our difference a little difficult to put into words. We call ourselves the Asian invasion. We laughed about that term, but looking back, it was clear that we had absorbed and internalized the racism of American society. In my case, I was lucky that I've never been called a racist slur to my face. Although one of my white elementary school classmates, knowing that I came from Vietnam, asked me if I carried an AK-47 and fought in the war. My classmate had been irradiated by the images he and I and all my eventual Asian American classmates saw. We knew that somehow we were seen by other Americans as invaders of their country, even if it happened to be our country, too. The irony was that we had not invaded America. America had invaded us, or at the very least had occupied a spot in our countries of origin or heritage. We were here because America was there. Our parents, for the most part, told us to get a good education, get a good job, and not speak up. Things they had to do to survive. They have encouraged or forced the many of us to become doctors, lawyers, and engineers, and to feel ashamed if we do not. What these parents did not do was to tell us that we could become artists, actors, or storytellers, people engaged in seemingly trivial, unsafe, and unstable professions. This is why it has been so rare for me, as I give talks in different places around the country, to encounter Asian parents who embrace their children who do not become the model minority. Looking back, what I only belatedly realized was that we all needed, more stories featuring us, more voices belonging to us, more advocates telling our stories in our with our faces, our reflections, our concerns, our intuitions. We just needed to be at the center of a story, which would include all the complexities of human subjectivity. Not just the good, but the bad. The three-dimensional fullness the white people took for granted with the privilege of being individuals. When it came to mass media's representations of us, film and television, morning radio disc jockey jokes, journalistic punditry, we got only the bad. We were collectively the villains, the servants, the enemies, the mistresses, the houseboys, the invaders. As a result, so many of us who watched these distorted images and heard the stupid jokes learned to be ashamed of ourselves. We learned to be ashamed of our parents. And the shame compounded the inability to say I love you, a phrase that belonged to the wonderful world of white people we saw in the movies and television. We had to learn better. But the truth is that Asian parents have to learn better too. You have to encourage your children to speak up as well, to claim their voices, to risk mediocrity and failure, to tell their stories and your stories. At the very least, you cannot stand in their way. A high school classmate who lived in the elite, mostly white city of Saratoga, California in the 1980s told me that when Asians, the good professional Asians, started moving in, white people started moving out. No amount of Asian American success will change this dynamic of white people fearing the weird the Asian invasion, taking their jobs, breaking their curve, stealing their seats in the Ivy League, until we challenge racism of both the explicit and implicit kinds. We are still the Asian invasion in the eyes of many. And if we're not as terrifying today as we were in the past, it is at least partly because many white Americans are more afraid of invasions by Muslims, Mexicans, and Central Americans. Many people who might not wish to be our neighbors would at least prefer us to be African Americans. We cannot accept this as our price of entry into American society. If we must assert ourselves and speak out against racism when it is directed against us, we must also do so when it benefits us. And we do that by challenging and changing the American story. We do it by taking the stage and by telling our own stories, which is really, in the end, our own way of saying I love you to our parents, our families, our communities, and our country.
So we are now going to have our first musical interlude. Please welcome Gilda Del Bianco, who will be performing Chopin's Etude number 12. So our second category tonight is humor. Junior Joshua Pabo brings us a somewhat highbrow retelling of the well-known story of the wolf that attempts to eat the three little pigs. Please welcome Joshua Pabo.
In time past, though not long ago, there lived pigs. In stature, little, and in number, 3, who, being of an age both entitled and inspired to seek their fortune, did set about to do thusly. When they traveled a distance, pig number first spake, saying, "Hearken, brethren, heed this tempestuous realm. Tarry we long from hearth and home, we shall fare, I fear, not well." So, being collectively agreed, but individually compelled, the diminutive swine set about to erect for himself an abode. Pig number 1 did construct his house from straw. Pig number 2 did likewise, though rather not from straw, but from sticks. Meanwhile, unique in his imaginings, pig number 3 did erect us his domicile, stalwart and garish, a structure made from brick entirely. Soon there happened along, as is frequently the scenario in classic tale, a protagonist pig or red-hooded child, a wolf. Carnivorous nature in full season, the wolf cried out to the strong-sconced swine, saying, "Pray thee, little pig, grant me entrance." But pig number 1 recalled the sage foreboding that he's mad, then entrusts the tameness of a belly-pinched wolf, and responded immediately, "Nay, it shall not be, indeed, not by wit or whiskered jowl." Prepared for this most expected response, the wolf responded immediately, "Then steel thyself, little pig. Forthwith I shall endeavor by employing means of huffing and puffing to dismantle yon flaxen fortress." Whereupon there issued forth from the wolf an exhale of gale proportions, which quickly rendered straw hovel to dregs and dross, and carried aloft piglet and shattered quarters both. Exposed now to claw and fang, piglet 1 made haste, wolf in pursuit, to the stick-festooned sanctum of peccary secondary, causing pig 2 to cry out in dismay, "What is not my knickers? The marshalling of fair wolf to my doorstep is nowhere near those endeavors, animal or congenial!" 1,000 pardons, squealed one. "So it seemed the beast's main full breath has purged me of home and son judgment alike." The mighty maelstrom of the wolf's exhale splattered second swine's shack and shortened his sanctimonious scolding simultaneously. "Lo and behold!" squealed 2. "Stand we amid the wooden wreckage, tremulous and vulnerable, with daring strategy pursuing the canine power, loving in deadly proximity!" "Strategy!" squealed 1. "While 'tis noble to contemplate tactical particularities, stressed though we in the time restraint, forbidding detailed strategical analysis, urge and run, we. Whether by their own fleet-footedness or the wolf's winless attitude, the diminutive swine arrived at their ultimate kindred neighbor's inexpugnable brick ingress unscathed. Upon the third pig's door with urgent hoofs they pounded, "Our mother's entered to his 360!" Pig 3 hailed from the American colonies, possessing vocabulary substantially less robust than his impromptu neighbors replied. "Say what?" "Sacred sanctuary!" they implored, on the verge of hysteria. "Lest we fall forthwith to the ravenous apathy of yonder approaching carnival!" Still confounded by their importunate words, Pig 3 did render ajar the portal, whereupon 1 and 2 spilled forth and collapsed beyond the threshold and never aided. "So you just wanted to come in? I mean, you could have said that." The sinister hiss of the wolf could once again be heard outside. "Pray thee, little pigs, grant me entrance." "The wolf!" cried 1 and 2. "Wolf!" said 3. Well, what do you suppose he wants?" "He seeks to gain purchase within! Indeed, he would occupy this very alcove where he afforded the most meager of opportunities!" "Right," said 3. "Well, I'll just go ask him what he wants." "Under no circumstance!" squealed 2, flinging himself bodily against the portal. "There is not to be gained from accosting external opponent, save for own immediate demise!" What did you just say about my mama?" House occupants were again in a malevolent blast of wolfish wind. The foundation shook, the frame rattled, And lo, to the astonished eyes of Pidlet and encroaching scoundrel alike, stood the third pig's lodging, undaunted. Good news for you pig fans. Aghast and dismayed, Pig 2 cleared of 3. How does it get such relentless and torrential onslaught this domicile endure? Pig 3 puffed out his chest, tapped his hoof to the hoff and said, "It's American made."
Stephen Colbert is known for his satirical representations of American culture and politics. In this piece, brought to us by sophomore Colin Scanlon, Colbert takes a look at America's attitude toward the sources of energy. Please welcome Colin Scanlon.
Energy is no game. It's a vital part of our economy. But what if it were a game? We'd be like A-Rod strapped to LeBron's back being thrown downfield by Tom Brady. We only have 5% of the world's population, yet we use 20% of the energy. We're meeting expectations by 400%, according to my diesel-powered calculator. The point is, we're winning energy. If you watch TV, and I pray you do, you know that our nation's biggest potential employer is America's oil and gas producers. The reason you know that is through a series of powerful energy ads which prove that the only way of getting this nation back on track is through coal mining, oil drilling, drill mining, coal oiling, drill coaling, drill drilling, and drill manilaling. In 2010 alone, America consumed 6.99 billion barrels of oil. To put that in perspective, if you took 6.99 billion barrels of oil end to end, painted them all green, and then painted eyes and fangs on the front, it looked like a really long snake. There's so many more places we could be drilling for America's future. What would you say if I told you there's an untapped oil reserve on land, right here in America, that we're not using, that could drive down the price of gas by $1 or more overnight? And to get it, all we have to do is let petroleum companies ravage our national parks. Sadly, there is a sinister conspiracy which is hoarding these resources to themselves. This powerful and shadowy cabal is known as campers. And they're not alone. Take the coastal elites who don't mind filling up their Priuses from flyover states they sneer at, like Texas or Oklahoma, whatever. But when it comes to putting oil platforms off the capes of their cods, they say offshore rigs are ugly. Well, I think they kind of look like the Eiffel Tower. Oh no! Please don't put an Eiffel Tower, one of the most photographed buildings ever, on my front lawn. Oh, that would be just too romantic! The enviros whine about how an undersea oil spill could harm their precious man-eating sharks. But that's conveniently overlooking the fact that offshore drilling is actually cleaning up a massive oil spill. There's an ocean of crude beneath that ocean of ocean. A potential spill which oil companies are working tirelessly to extract from its contaminant rock, which would cause a mega disaster so devastating we may never recover. No matter how many uplifting Dawn commercials we watched. But for some reason, you never hear about liberal environmentalists talking about all that oil lurking underneath the seabed. Why is that, guys? Could it be because it's black? Folks, there's no time to waste. We have to get that oil out from underneath the seabed. Our children swim in there. Or at least they would, if they put down that damned iPad and actually enjoyed this vacation under something. Of all the potential energy sources that will define America's future, none have defined America's past future like coal. During the Industrial Revolution, coal is the reason our steamships could sail, the reason our street lamps burned bright, and the reason until 1970 you couldn't see Chicago. Naturally, the nature-hugging naysayers naysay that we should stop using coal. But where would America be without coal? Imagine a land of no heavy industry, no highways, no skyscrapers, no neon signs visible from space. Just acre after acre of rolling green field and frolicking wildlife. Smug, frolicking wildlife. I say we should be proud of our coal, because America's perched on a buttload of it. To be precise, 272 billion buttloads. That's enough to power America for 200 butt years. And since coal is non-renewable, that means it'll only go up in value. Folks, we can't blindly depend on coal forever. If America's going to be energy independent, we need to blindly depend on something else. And for the longest time, we didn't know what that could be, no matter how hard we blindly looked for it. Then came a tale of all-American ingenuity and random geographical happenstance. Because as it turns out, America is sitting on 482 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. We just stumbled upon it. It's like we went down to the basement to dust off the Nordic Trek and discovered a Picasso. What burst out is clean-burning, easy to transport, odorless, quiet, and very, very profitable. In short, it's a big old silent but wealthy. And natural gas is 100% safe-ish. All we have to do is make sure we leave enough behind so that the Earth can keep floating in space. Our gas is trapped in this rock called shale, but we can liberate it using a process called fracking, or hydrofracking for less short. Now, some environmentalists think that shattering the bedrock of Pennsylvania into a chemical slurry may not be safe. But Evel Knievel did a lot of things that weren't safe, and he was awesome! I don't recall the EPA ever forcing him to reveal all the chemicals in his shattered bones. Checkmate! What I say, when it comes to decisions that will affect our future, we should leave it up to the future. And I believe that children are the future. Look, I understand the appeal of alternative energy. Who hasn't dreamt of an Indianapolis 500 where all the cars have Flintstone holes in the bottom and are controlled by the feet of the effeminate crazed drivers? No. Sure. But still, as I write this, there's no alternative source which can hold a candle to fossil fuels. That's why I'm for an all-of-the-above energy policy, as long as it includes none of the below. Solar power! Harnessing the sun's power may seem like a good idea, but only if you're delirious with sunstroke. It's completely impractical. How are you going to fit the entire sun into your car? It's huge and super hot. You'd use up most of the power running the air conditioning. And lunar power is just as impractical. If we want energy powered by the moon, we'd have to put a bunch of werewolves in giant hamster wheels. But that would only work once a month. Tidal power! Some scientists think that we can get our energy from ocean tides because it's more reliable than wind or sunlight. Really? You're gonna count on something that gets high twice a day? Algae. Algae? I don't trust it. First of all, just look at the way it's spelled. And don't tell me that algae contains up to 50% lipid oil, because I have no idea what lipid oil is. Besides, if algae is such a great alternative energy, then how come my car stopped working when I drove it into my koi pond? Wind power. Wind is for powering our sailboats when our motor fails, or for making our flags flutter majestically. Period. People who advocate for wind power have never asked the obvious question. What happens when one of these wind farms has a major accident, and we're faced with a massive wind spill? Have you ever tried getting wind out of the air? It's nearly impossible! Geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is energy harnessed from within inside the Earth's crust. But before we can harness geothermal energy, we have to take the Earth's temperature with a geothermometer. And I have no idea where the Earth's anus is. The most common type of geothermal power plant uses heated water from inside the Earth's crust. Really? You don't think maybe the mole people are going to notice a sudden drop in their water pressure? More oil. What a great alternative. Hey, the Earth isn't broken yet, so why fix it? That's why the best alternative to oil is more oil. More oil is different than a regular oil because there's more of it. More oil is by far the best answer to our energy problems. After all, if you fight fire with fire, why not fight oil with oil?
In one of Shakespeare's most famous plays, A Midsummer Night's Dream, a group of townsmen attempt to put on a play in order to entertain the local nobility. Unfortunately, this group is not actually very good at acting. In particular, the leader, Peter Quince, has his hands full trying to control the overconfident and self-important Nick Bottom, who wants to play all the parts himself. Senior Ellie Johnson will bring us the first meeting where Peter Quince plans his play and Nick Bottom tries to steal the show. Please welcome Ellie Johnson.
Is all our company here? You are best to call them generally, man by man, according to the script. Here is a scroll of every man's name which is thought fit throughout all Athens to play in our interlude before the Duke and the Duchess on his wedding day at night. First, good Peter Quince. Say what the play treats on, then read the names of your actors and so grow to a point. Mary, our play is the most lamentable comedy and most cruel death of Pyrrhus and Thisbe. A very good piece of work, I assure you, and Mary. Now, good Peter Quince. Call forth your actors by the scroll. Masters, spread yourselves. Answer as I call you. Nick Bottom, the weaver. Ready. Name what parton for, and proceed. You, Nick Bottom, are set down for Pyramus. What is Pyramus? A lover or a tyrant? A lover who kills himself most gallant for love. That will ask some tears in the true performing of it. If I do it, let the audience look to their eyes. I will move storms. I will condole in some measure. To the rest. Yet, my chief humor is for a tyrant. The raging rocks and shivering shocks shall break the locks of prison gates, and Phoebus' car shall shine from far, and make and mar the foolish fates. This was lofty. A lover is more condoling. Now name the rest of the players. Francis Flute, the bellows mender. Here, Peter Quince. Flute, you must take Thisbe on you. What is Thisbe? A wandering knight? It is the lady that Pyramus must love. Nay, faith, let not me play a woman. I have a beard coming. That's all one. You may do it in a mask, and you may speak as small as you will. And I may hide my face. Let me play Thisbe too. I will speak in a monstrous little voice. Thisne, Thisne. Ah, Pyramus, my lover dear. Thy Thisbe dear, and lady dear. No, you must play Pyramus, and Flute, you Thisbe. Well, proceed. Snug the joiner. You the lion's part, and I hope here is a play well fitted. Of you the lion's part, written do it extempore, for it is nothing but roaring. Let me play the lion too. I will roar, that I will make any man's heart good to hear me. I will roar, that I will make the Duke say, let him roar again. Let him roar again. You must play no part but Pyramus. For Pyramus is a sweet-faced man, a proper man as one shall see on a summer's day, a most lovely, gentlemanlike man. Therefore you must play Pyramus. Well, I will undertake it. But masters, here are your parts, and I entreat you, request you, and desire you to con them by tomorrow night, and meet me in the palace wood a mile without the town by moonlight. I pray you, fail me not. We will meet, and there we will rehearse most obscenely and courageously. Take pains, be perfect. Adieu.
Junior Judy Tao will now interpret a reflection on an activity that is both a common delight and a common challenge, eating an ice cream cone. Please welcome Judy Tao.
Before you even get the cone, you have to do a lot of planning about it. We'll assume you lost the argument in the car and that the family has decided to break the automobile journey and stop at an ice cream stand for cones. Get things straight with them right from the start. Tell them that after they have their cones, there will be an imaginary circle 6 feet away from the car, and that no one, man, woman, or especially child, will be allowed to cross the line and re-enter the car until his ice cream cone has been entirely consumed and he has cleaned himself up. Melted ice cream, children, is a fluid that is eternally sticky. 1 drop of it on a car door handle spreads to seat covers, to trousers, to hands, and then to the steering wheel, the gear shift, the rearview mirror, all the knobs of dashboard, spreads everywhere and lasts forever. It spreads from a nice old car like this, which might have to be abandoned because of stickiness, right into a nasty new car, in secret ways that even scientists don't understand. If necessary, even make a joke. The family that eats ice cream cones together sticks together. Then, let your mother explain the joke and tell them you don't mean half of what you say, and no, we won't be getting a new car. Blast about the children who always eat the same flavored ice cream, or always know beforehand what kind they will want. Such good children should be quarantined from those who want to wait and see what flavors there are. It's a sad thing to observe a beautiful young child who has always been perfectly happy with a plain vanilla ice cream cone being subverted by a young schoolmate who has been invited along for the weekend. A pleasant and polite visitor, perhaps, but spoiled by permissive parents and scarred by an overactive imagination. This schoolmate has a flair for contingency planning. Well, I'll have banana if they have banana, but if they don't have banana, then I have peach, if it's fresh peach. And if they don't have banana or fresh peaches, I'll see what else they have that's like that, like maybe fresh strawberry or something. And if they don't have that or anything like that, that's good. I'll just have chocolate marshmallow chip or chocolate ripple or something like that. Then, turning to one's own once simple and innocent child, now already corrupt and thinking fast. The schoolmate invites a similar rigmarole. What kind are you having? It would be nice if people could all be lined up in front of the man who is making up the cones and just snap smartly when their turn came. Strawberry, please. Vanilla, please. Chocolate, please. But of course, it never happens like that. There is always a great discussion, a great jostling and craning of necks and leaning over the counter to see down into the tubs of ice cream, and much interpersonal consultation. What kind are you having? Back and forth, as if that should make any difference. Ice cream men handle cones routinely. and are inured. They're like professionals who are used to handling sticks of TNT. Their movements are quick and skillful. An ice cream man will pass a cone to you casually, almost carelessly. Never accept a cone on this basis. Lock his eyes with your own. And then, slowly, calmly, and above all, deliberately, take the cone. A huge, irregular mass of ice cream, insecurely balanced on the uneven top edge of a hollow inverted cone made out of the most brittle and fragile of materials. In trying to make wise and correct decisions about the ice cream cone in your hand, you should always keep the objectives in mind. The main objective, of course, is to get the cone under control. Secondarily, one will want to eat the cone calmly and with pleasure. Real pleasure lies not simply in eating the cone, but in eating it right. Grasp the cone with the right hand firmly but gently between thumb and at least one, but no more than 3 fingers, 2/3 of the weight of the cone. Then dart swiftly away to an open area, away from the jostling crowd at the stand. Now, take up the classic ice cream cone eating stance. Feet from 1 to 2 feet apart. Body bent forward at the waist at a 25-degree angle. Right elbow well up. Right forearm horizontal at a level with your collarbone and about 12 inches from it. The cone is still dangerous. Still, so to speak, live. But you can now proceed with it in an orderly fashion. First, revolve the cone through the full 360 degrees, snapping at the loose gobs of ice cream. Turn the cone by moving the thumb away from you and the forefinger toward you, so the cone moves counterclockwise. Apply pressure with the mouth and tongue to accomplish overall realignment, straightening and settling the whole mess. Then, turning the cone back through the full 360 degrees, remove any trickles of ice cream. From now on, some supplementary repairs might be necessary, but the cone is now defused. At this point, you can risk a glance around you. How badly the others are doing with their cones. Now you can settle down to eating yours. At each bite, you must press down cautiously so that the ice cream settles farther and farther into the cone. If all these procedures are followed correctly, you should shortly arrive at the ideal. The way an ice cream cone is always pictured, but never actually is when it is handed to you. A small dome whose circumference exactly coincides with the large circumference of the cone itself. You have made order out of chaos. You are an artist. You have taken an unnatural, abhorrent, irregular, chaotic form, and from it you have sculpted an ordered, ideal shape that might be envied by Praxiteles or even Euclid. Now at last, you can begin to take little nibbles of the cone itself. Revolve the cone so that its rim remains smooth and level as you eat both ice cream and cone in the same ratio. Because of the geometrical nature of things, a constantly reduced inverted cone still remains a perfect inverted cone no matter how small it grows. Then, while the others are licking their sticky fingers, preparatory to wiping them on their clothes or going back to the ice cream stand for more paper napkins to try to clean themselves up, then you can hold the miniature cone up for everyone to see and pop it gently into your mouth.
We're going to welcome back Gilda Del Bianco, who's going to bring us a piece by Debussy. I think is it the dance? Correct? final category, drama. Senior Harrison Flack will bring us an interpretation of H.G. Wells' famous novel, The Time Machine. In it, Wells imagines a man who's invented a time machine, enabling him to explore the far distant past and the far distant future of the Earth. Please welcome Harrison.
For an indefinite time, I clung to the machine as it swayed and vibrated, quite unheeding how I went. And when I brought myself to look at the dials again, I was amazed to find where I had arrived. One dial records days, another thousands of days, another millions of days, and another thousands of millions. Now, instead of reversing the levers, I had pulled them over as to go forward with them. And when I came to look at these indicators, I found that the thousand's hand was sweeping round as fast as the second's hand of a watch, into futurity. I stopped. I was on a bleak moorland, covered with a sparse vegetation and gray with a thin hoarfrost. Only a few black bushes broke the monotony of the scene. I rose to my feet and stared at this grotesque monster. I can only describe it by comparing it to a centipede. It stood about 3 feet high and had a long, segmented body, perhaps 30 feet long, with curiously overlapping greenish-black plates. It seemed to crawl upon a multitude of feet, looping its body as it advanced. Leaving my gray animal on the ground, I set off. Once more I remounted the machine, and once more the world grew hazy and gray. As I drove on, a peculiar change crept over the appearance of things. The palpitating grayness grew darker. Then, though I was still traveling with prodigious velocity, the blinking succession of day and night, which is usually indicative of a slower pace, returned and grew more and more marked. This puzzled me very much at first. The alternations of night and day grew slower and slower, and so did the passage of the sun across the sky, until it seemed to stretch through centuries. At last, a steady twilight brooded over the earth. I stopped very gently and sat upon the time machine, looking round. The machine was standing on a sloping beach. Looking round me again, I saw that quite near, what I had taken to be a reddish mass of rock was moving slowly towards me. Then, I saw the thing was really a monstrous crab-like creature. Can you imagine a crab as large as yonder table, with its many legs moving slowly and uncertainly? Its big claws swaying, its long antennae like carters' whips waving and feeling, and its stalked eyes gleaming at you on either side of its metallic front. As I stared at this sinister apparition crawling towards me, I felt a tickling on my cheek, as though a fly had lighted there. With a frightful qualm, I turned, and I saw that I had grasped the antenna of another monster crab that stood just behind me. In a moment, my hand was on the lever, and I had placed a month between myself and these monsters. I cannot convey the sense of abominable dread that hung over the world. The red eastern sky, the northward blackness, the salt Dead Sea, the stony beach crawling with these foul, slow-stirring monsters. I moved on 100 years, and there was the same red sun, a little larger, a little duller, the same dying sea, the same chill air, and the same crowd of earthly crustacea creeping in and out among the green weed and the red rocks. So I traveled, stopping ever and again in great strides of 1,000 years or more, drawn on by the mystery of Earth's fate, watching with a strange fascination the sun grow larger and duller and the life of the old Earth ebb away. Then I stopped once more, for the crawling multitude of crabs had disappeared, and the red beach, save for its livid green liverworts and lichens, seemed lifeless. The darkness grew apace. A cold wind began to blow in freshening gusts from the east, and the showering white flakes in the air increased in number. From the edge of the sea came a ripple and a whisper. Beyond these lifeless sounds, the world was silent. It would be hard to convey the stillness of it all. All the sounds of man the bleating of sheep, the cries of birds, the hum of insects, the stir that makes the background of our lives. All that was over. A horror of this great darkness came on me. I felt giddy and incapable of facing the return journey. Then I felt I was fainting. But a terrible dread of lying helpless in that remote and awful twilight sustained me while I clambered upon the saddle.
One of the most prominent American painters from the 1950s and 1960s was Mark Rothko. In the play Red, Rothko comes to life as an opinionated and passionate artist. Sophomore Julia Lindo will now interpret this character, bringing Rothko to us as he reflects on art and culture. Please welcome Julia.
What do you see? Wait, stand closer. You've got to get close. Let it pulsate, let it work on you. Closer. Too close. There. Let it spread out. Let it wrap its arms around you. Let it embrace you, filling even your peripheral vision, so that nothing else exists or has ever existed or will ever exist. Let the picture do its work. But work with it. Meet it halfway, for God's sake. Lean forward, lean into it, engage with it. Now, what do you see? Be specific. No. Be exact. Be exact, but sensitive. You understand? Be kind. Be a human being, that's all I can say. Be a human being for once in your life. These pictures deserve compassion, and they live or die in the eye of the sensitive viewer. They quicken if only the empathetic viewer will let them. That is what they cry out for. That is why they were created. That is what they deserve. Now, what do you see? But do you like it? Of course you like it. How can you not like it? Everyone likes everything nowadays. They like the television and the phonograph, and the soda pop and the shampoo and the Cracker Jack. Everything becomes everything else, and it's all nice and pretty and likable. Everything's fun in the sun. Where's the discernment? Where's the arbitration that separates what I like from what I respect, from what I deem worth? What has, listen to me now, significance? Maybe this is a dinosaur talking. Maybe I'm speaking a lost language unknown to your generation. But a generation that does not aspire to seriousness, to meaning, is unworthy to walk in the shadows of those who have gone before. I mean those who have struggled and surmounted. I mean those who have aspired. I mean Rembrandt, I mean Turner, I mean Michelangelo and Matisse. I mean, obviously, Rothko. Do you aspire? Don't be so pedestrian. Think more. The perfect life would be perfectly balanced, everlastingly on the fulcrum. But our tragedy is that we can never achieve that balance. We exist, all of us, for all time, in a state of perpetual dissonance. We long for the raw truth of emotion, but can only endure it with the cool lie of reason. We seek to capture the ephemeral and miraculous and put it onto canvas, stopping time. But, like an entomologist pinning a butterfly, it dies when we try. We're foolish like that, we human beings. We try to make the red black. You admire those colors. Why? Of course you like them, that's the damn point. You know what people like? Happy, bright colors. They want things to be pretty. They want things to be beautiful. When someone says one of my pictures is beautiful, I want to vomit. Pretty, beautiful, nice, fine. That's our life now. Everything's fine. We put on the funny nose and glasses and slip on the banana peel, and the TV makes everyone happy, and everyone's laughing all the time. It's all so damn funny. It's our constitutional right to be amused all the time, isn't it? We're a smirking nation living under the tyranny of fine. How are you? Fine. How was your day? Fine. How are you feeling? Fine. How'd you like the painting? Fine. Want some dinner? Fine. Well, let me tell you, everything is not fine. How are you? How is your day? How are you feeling? Conflicted, nuanced, troubled, diseased, doomed. I am not fine. We are not fine. We are anything but fine. Look at these pictures. Look at them. You see the dark rectangle like a doorway, an aperture. But it's also a gaping mouth, letting out a silent howl for something feral and foul and primal and real. Not nice, not fine, real. A moan of rapture, something divined or damned, something immortal, not comic books or soup cans, something beyond me and beyond now, and whatever it is, it's not pretty and it's not fine. I am here to stop your heart, you understand that? I am here to make you think. I am not here to make pretty pictures. I do get depressed when I think how people are going to see my pictures. They're going to be unkind. Selling pictures is like sending a blind child into a room full of razor blades. It's going to get hurt, and it's never been hurt before. It doesn't know what hurt is. Yes, when I was your age, art was a lonely thing. No galleries, no collecting, no critics, no money. We didn't have mentors. We didn't have parents. We were alone. It was a great time because we had nothing to lose and a vision to gain. Okay? Make something new. What do you see?
In 1969, poet Maya Angelou published an autobiographical account of her childhood called I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. Tonight, sophomore Zara Pulapati will bring us a scene from Angelou's recollections, a scene in which the young Angelou feels thwarted hopes and the constraints of her place in her community, a poor black community in Arkansas of the 1930s. Please welcome Zara.
What you looking at me for? I didn't come to stay. I hadn't so much forgotten as I couldn't bring myself to remember. Other things were more important. What you looking at me for? I didn't come to stay. Whether I had forgotten the rest of the poem or not was immaterial. The truth of the statement was like a wadded up handkerchief, sopping wet in my fist. And the sooner they accepted it, the quicker I could let my hands open, and the air would cool my palms. What you looking at me for? The children's section of the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church was wiggling and giggling over my well-known forgetfulness. The dress I wore was lavender taffeta, and each time I breathed, it rustled. And now that I was sucking in air only to breathe out shame, it sounded like crepe paper on the back of hearses. As I watched Mama put ruffles on the hem and cute little tucks around the waist, I knew that once I put it on, I was gonna look like a movie star. It was silk, and that made up for the awful color. I was gonna look like one of those sweet little white girls that was everybody's dream of what was right with the world. Hanging softly over the black Singer sewing machine, it looked like magic. When people saw me wearing it, they were gonna run up to me and say, Marguerite, or sometimes it was Dear Marguerite. Forgive us, please. We didn't know who you were. And I would answer generously, no, you couldn't have known. Of course I forgive you. Just thinking about it made me go around with angel's dust sprinkled over my face for days. But Easter's early morning sun had shown the dress to be a plain, ugly cut down from a white woman's once was purple throwaway. It was old lady long too, but it didn't hide my skinny legs, which had been greased with blue seal Vaseline and powdered with the Arkansas red clay. The age-faded color made my skin look dirty, like mud, and everyone in church was looking at my skinny legs. Wouldn't they be surprised when one day I woke out of my black, ugly dream and my real hair, which was long and blonde, had taken the place of this kinky mass that Mama wouldn't let me straighten? My light blue eyes would hypnotize them. After all the things they said about my daddy must have been a Chinaman, I thought they meant made out of china like a cup, because my eyes were so small and squinty. Then they would understand why I had never picked up a Southern accent or spoke the common slang, and why I had to be forced to eat pigs' tails and snouts. Because I was really white, and because a cruel fairy stepmother who was understandably jealous of my beauty had turned me into a too-big Negro girl with nappy black hair, broad feet, and a space between her teeth that would hold a number 2 pencil. What you looking? The minister's wife leaned toward me, her long yellow face full of sorry. She whispered, "I just come to tell you it's Easter Day." I repeated, jamming the words together. "I just come to tell you it's Easter Day," as low as possible. Their giggles hung in the air like melting clouds that were waiting to rain on me. I held up 2 fingers, close to my chest, which meant that I had to go to the toilet, and tiptoed toward the rear of the church. Dimly, somewhere over my head, I heard ladies saying, "Lord bless the child," and "Praise God." My head was up, and my eyes were open, but I didn't see anything. Halfway down the aisle, the church exploded with, "Were you there when they crucified my Lord?" And I tripped over a foot stuck out from the children's pew. I stumbled and started to say something, maybe even to scream, but a green persimmon, or it could have been a lemon, caught me between the legs and squeezed. I tasted the sour on my tongue and felt it in the back of my mouth. Then, before I reached the door, the sting was burning down my legs and into my Sunday socks. I tried to hold, to squeeze it back, to keep it from speeding, but when I reached the church porch, I knew I'd have to let it go, or it would probably run right back up to my head, and my poor head would burst like a dropped watermelon, and all the brains and spit and tongue and eyes would roll all over the place. So I ran down into the yard and let it go. I ran, peeing and crying, not to the toilet out back, but to our house. I'd get a whipping for it, to be sure, and the nasty children would have something new to tease me about. I laughed anyways, partially for the sweet release. Still, the greater joy came not only from being liberated from the silly church, but from the knowledge that I wouldn't die of a busted head. If growing up is painful for the Southern black girl, being aware of her displacement is the rust on the razor that threatens the throat. It is an unnecessary insult.
In his novel, Les Chouans, novelist Honoré de Balzac tells of intrigue and espionage during the French Revolutionary Wars. To his allies' chagrin, the Marquis de Mataran, the one-time leader of the rebel cause, has fallen in love with the beautiful and mysterious Mademoiselle d'Averny, purported spy of the Republican government. In this climactic scene, Montaran's friends and jealous mistress attempt to turn him against Mademoiselle d'Averny, whilst the opposing factions meet in an unexpected military engagement. Senior Donna Sanders will offer our final declamation for this evening with an interpretation of this scene. Please welcome Donna.
Six or eight persons, attracted by the noise of carriage wheels, came out on the portico, shouting, "It is Degas! It is he!" The Marquis de Montauran went hastily up to them, making an imperative gesture for silence. At the sight of the well-known blue uniforms with red facings, the glittering bayonets, the amazed conspirators called out hastily, "You have surely not betrayed us." "If I had, I should not warn you," said the Marquis, smiling bitterly. Those blues are the escort of a young lady whose generosity has delivered us, almost miraculously, from a danger we were in at Alençon. Mademoiselle and her escort are here in safety, on my word as a gentleman. The Baron de Guernic took the young leader by the arm and led him apart. My dear Marquis, we are much disturbed at seeing you on the point of committing an extraordinary folly. Do you know where that girl comes from, who she is, and what her schemes about you are? Suppose that creature betrays you tonight. I'll answer that when you tell me why she's not done it already. I will tell you this. If she were the lost creature our friends are trying to make her out, I would, after what she and I have said to each other, kill her myself. The party now moved into the dining room. The steps of a man echoed in the adjoining room, and the Marquis rose from the table to greet him. The new guest's astonishment was great when he observed the two Republican officers, and he questioned Madame de Guap with a look, while she, for all answer, showed him Mademoiselle de Vernay. The face of the stout stranger broke into one of those insolent, ironical smiles. He leaned to his next neighbor and whispered a few words which went from ear to ear and lip to lip, until they reached the heart of one whom they struck to death. In a moment the forks remained inactive in every hand. Silence reigned, and every eye was turned to the Marquis. A frightful anger showed upon his face, which turned waxen in tone. He leaned towards the guest from whom the rocket had started and said, "Death of my soul, Count. Is that true?" The Marquis lowered his eyes for a moment, and he raised them and looked fixedly at Mademoiselle de Vernay, who knew that look to be her death warrant. "I would give my life," he said in a low voice, "for revenge on the spot." Just then, a volley fired with terrible regularity echoed through the courtyard. The two officers sprang to the portico. There they beheld 100 or so Chouans, aiming at the few Republican soldiers who were not shot down at the first discharge. These they fired upon as upon so many hares. At the noise of the volley, the guests all sprang to their feet, but Madame de Guap remained seated. "Mademoiselle, whom you see here," she began with the calmness of concentrated fury, "came here to betray the God. She meant to deliver him up to the Republic. I could have done so 20 times today, and yet I saved his life," said Mademoiselle de Vernay. Madame de Guap sprang upon her rival like lightning. In her blind excitement, she tore apart the fastenings of the young girl's spencer, the stuff, the embroidery, the corset, the chemise, and plunged her savage hand into the bosom, where, as she well knew, a letter lay hidden. In doing this, her jealousy so bruised and tore the palpitating throat of her rival that she left bloody marks of her nails, feeling a sort of pleasure in making her submit to so degrading a prostitution. Mademoiselle de Vernay quivered in shame before the looks of the assembled men. Paying no attention to the Marquis, who was just entering the room, Madame de Guap called to the Chouan that followed him, "Kilmish, take her. She is my share of the booty, and I turn her over to you. Do what you like with her." At these words, the whole assembly shuddered. The punishment was seen in all its horror. Mademoiselle de Vernay cast a look of contempt at the assembled men, snatched the letter from Madame de Guap's hand, and darted towards the door, where a sword was still leaning. There she came upon the Marquis, cold and motionless as a statue. Nothing pleaded for her on his fixed, firm features. The man who had pledged her so much love must have heard the odious jests that were cast upon her, and stood there, silently, a witness of the infamy she had been made to endure. She flung him a look that was full of hatred. With death beside her, the sense of impotence almost strangled her. A whirlwind of passion and madness rose in her head. She seized the sword and thrust it through the Marquis. But the weapon slipped between his arm and his side. He caught her by the wrist and dragged her from the room. "You hurt me," she said. Then, seeing the dead bodies on the heap of straw, cried out, shuddering, "The face of a gentleman! The glorious day!" "Yes," he said, "a day without a morrow."
All right, judges, it is time for you to go make your deliberation. I'm going to ask one of our English teachers, Alicia Bremler, will escort you to the art room on the left, and you will come back when you've got a decision for us. And now we'll have our last piano interlude. Please welcome again Gilda Del Bianco. space, and I think Tech is going to favor us with a video. I know we've got, I think, an international festival highlights video that Martin Lee has been working on. Tech, take it away. Tech. Let's give another round of applause for Martin Lee. Hi, Mr. Jeffrey. You're about to take a photograph. Is that part of the yearbook project? Is that?
Yearbook will be providing QR codes to link to Martin's videos. There are other ways to access as well.
Okay. So, right. So, students, something that we're starting to work on is providing some video content linked to the yearbook. So that'll be exciting for us to have as a sort of feature going forward in our yearbooks. So, so thank you, yearbook team, and thank you, Martin Lee, for that. So, yeah, thank you. So while our judges are wrapping up their decisions, and I'm sure it's a difficult one, declaimers, well done. It was. I'm sure it's a difficult decision for them. So thank you. So there are some people that I need to thank for helping to make this evening possible. I wish to thank first and foremost my colleagues and fellow teachers who coached and evaluated declaimers in class and narrowed the upper school field from about 300 down to about 50 semifinalists, and then helped judge the semifinal competition that has resulted in the 12 finalists that you saw tonight. So thank you to Alicia and Brad Brumler, to Magida Smith, to Andrew Barber, Molly Jones, Nate DeMoro, Bruce Jeffrey, Rachel Stone, and Brad and Deb Davis. Thank you, teachers. So I'm grateful for the advice and assistance of Franny Cristel and Lori Simmons, who did a lot of work behind the scenes to help bring this evening about. If we could show some appreciation for them, too. So tonight, we have been given the opportunity to support the efforts and talents of some of our best Stony Brook School declaimers. Students, you all know from firsthand experience what a declamation requires of a performer. The concentration, the command of timing and expression. All right, tonight's finalists have done very well, and I'm sure as the judges are working on finishing their decision, I'm sure that our finalists have made this a hard decision for them. So one more time, let's show our appreciation for our finalists. And I also want to thank Gilda Del Bianco, who has been amazing on the piano. As the judges are still working on their decision, I have a tap dance routine that I Oh, the wrong shoes. I have the wrong shoes. Sorry about that. Forgot. Don't have my tap dancing shoes with me this evening. This won't be quite like a tap dance routine, but I would like to conclude with a short poem that's written by Thomas, R.S. Thomas, 20th century Welsh poet and priest, and it is entitled The Other. There are nights that are so still that I can hear the small owl calling far off and a fox barking miles away. It is then that I lie in the lean hours awake, listening to the swell born somewhere in the Atlantic, rising and falling, wave on the long shore, on the village that is without light and companionless. And the thought comes of that other being who is awake too, letting our prayers break on him, not like this for a few hours, but for days, for years, for eternity. So students, I think about that poem in part because I think about your role in making tonight possible. One thing that I really appreciate, and maybe it's because you have worked on declamations yourselves, but I appreciate what you are doing to be a good audience, to help make this event possible. You probably, I don't know if you've reflected on this, but right, if we had these 12 people here doing this to an empty room, or even just doing this to a video recorder, right? It would not be the same thing, right? There's something magical that happens when you have a real audience, an audience that is listening, that is supportive, that is paying attention. And I know that these declaimers definitely felt the support that you gave them tonight. And I want you to reflect on this as an opportunity to kind of think about what it means to be a good audience. We have the opportunity often to go to things and help make an event happen, right? And without a good audience, the event is flat. It doesn't happen the same way, right? It's the same thing with live theater, right? No show is ever the same twice. And it's not just the actors that are different, it's the audience that is often different. So, students, thank you. Thank you so much for your part tonight. Looks like our judges are returning. All right, so declaimers, and Gilda, could I have you come onto the stage? Come on down. So, a little out of order. So these are a little too slippery. Sorry about the delay. All right, so I'd like to begin by thanking and congratulating Gilda Del Bianco. Declaimers tonight in oratory, Tina Luo. Tiffany Ani. Deanna Kelly. Ruby Lee. Humor Joshua Pava. Colin Scanlon. Ellie Johnson. Judy Tao. And in drama, Harrison Flack. Julia Lindo. Zara Porpati. Donna Sanders. All right, and Mr. Jeffrey, are you hoping to corral judges and okay, so in a second I'm going to announce the winner in each category, and then we'll be really excited, and you will want to rush the stage and lift them up on your shoulders and like festoon them with garlands and parade them to the village. But instead of doing that, we'll wait for a minute and because we need some photos taken. So if you will give the judges and the declaimers a minute on the stage with the photographers, and then when the photographers are done, you can then go festoon them. Okay? All right. So the winners in oratory, Ruby Lee. In humor, Colin Scanlon. In drama, Julia Lindo. Finalists, did you all get a gift certificate? Yes? Okay. Great. All right. So, well done. Thank you, contestants. Congratulations. Mr. Jeffrey, what would you like for lighting?
This is fine.
This is fine. Okay. Photographers, take it away.
Always.